Yeah.
All right, let's share the screen on this one. This is TO before we do our better lineup.
I heard this, yeah.
TO stopped by on the morning roast with Shasky and Bonte.
He's right now is a focal point.
Shasky and Bonte. And here's what TO had to say, and then we'll talk about it. Here's TO on 95.7 The Game.
He's right now is a focal point. Obviously, they got Kittles. Again, he's been battling injuries here and there. Deebo is not really playing up to Deebo standards. Deebo seems like he's more focused on his pregame attire than he is actually the game. So again, if we can shift that focus, maybe that can energize and create some more production, from an offensive standpoint. I'm just kind of tongue in cheek with that, but again, Juwan Jennings, like I said, to your point, dynamic player. Like I said, the only thing I think he lacks is, like I said, is that game changing ability. Yeah, he's a playmaker, go up, make plays, but he can only do so much. He needs somebody else to complement what he's doing from an offensive standpoint. Like I said, the running game has to come along the way as well. So I'm sure the more games that Christian gets back on the field, he can get back in there and get back to himself, then you'll probably see that offensive firepower that everybody's expecting as the season wears on. He's right now.
What do you think? What do you think of T.O.'s comments? To me, it's like, you got to be kidding me.
That's rich, right?
You put a Sharpie in your sock anticipating a touchdown dance where you would have a prop.
But here's the difference. Here's the difference. He actually scored the damn touchdown.
Yeah, but now you're going to sit there and question Deebo's, motivation and this and that. I think Deebo's not great, and Deebo's backslid, and he's not having a great year, but it's not about motivation. And it's definitely not about his pregame fit or what he's wearing. I mean, that's just stupid talk.
He's been on that nonsense forever. And listen, he's got to say something. And it's T.O. It's rich that T.O. is going in on someone's quote unquote lack of focus. I don't question Deebo's focus at all. Even he's got the podcast. Clearly he doesn't care that much about it because it's unlistenable. And so I know that Deebo mentally is there for the game. I can visually see that he's mentally there. I see him correcting players where they need to line up and stuff. He knows this stuff. He knows the offense. His body just doesn't cooperate. It's done. It's over for the Deebo Samuel that we once knew. And the drop-off is precipitous. It is tough to watch because Deebo Samuel, we talk about, Zuka here saying he's not a wide back anymore. If he ain't a wide back, I don't know what he is, because as a wide receiver, he doesn't separate and you can just jam him. I once saw Antoine Griezmann, the soccer player, jam him up. Like, Antoine Griezmann weighs 140 pounds. It is jarring. And I honestly would recommend anybody who hasn't focused in on this yet on Sunday, just watch Deebo at the line of scrimmage and imagine how the hell you're supposed to get that guy the ball. So what do? They hand it off to him, and you can see how that goes. There's no juice left in the legs. He was here for a good time, not for a long time. And ultimately, this is the drop-off. The issue is, B. Lauren, no one's trading with Deebo. Also, you can't post June 1 designated trade. You can cut him post June 1, but then you have a $10 million cap hit, not just for this year, but for next year. So, yeah.
I don't know if you saw my video today on this. Did you see my video on Deebo today?
I've been very busy, Larry. I apologize. I did not.
That's all right. It's all right. It's all right. But I did a video on it. And, I started thinking about this. And I'm like, what is the issue here? What is going on? What are we actually seeing? Because Deebo looks bad. I mean, he just doesn't, as you said, he can't turn the corner as a runner. He doesn't separate against man coverage.
Nope.
He doesn't make big plays for the most part anymore. And then, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, really, there's two kinds of runners in the NFL. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about a receiver or a running back. There's really two kinds of open field runners. The guys who have great speed and quickness and try to run around you, and the guys who have great power who try to run through you.
Mm-hmm.
And Deebo runs through you. Deebo's not a runner away from you. He doesn't run around you. He runs through you. He's a wide back. And I just started thinking about who are the power backs of our time. And I started looking them up. And sure enough, I knew what I was going to find. And it's exactly what I thought I was going to find. Jerome Bettis, big time power back, 8,000-yard seasons. He was great. But none of them came after the age of 29. Larry Johnson, Penn State running back, who was with Kansas City. He had 37 touchdowns in his third and fourth years combined, which is a ton.
He almost had 2,000 yards one year.
Yeah, 2,000-yard seasons, but he was done at the age of 27.
Yeah.
Earl Campbell had 5,000-yard seasons, but he had no 1,000-yard seasons after the age of 28.
Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch has had 6,000-yard seasons, but none since the age of 28. Ironhead Hayward was done at 29. Christian Okoye was done at 30. Mike Allstott, 6-time Pro Bowler, done at 28. Jim Brown, 7-time 1,000-yard rusher, done at 29. So there are exceptions,
That's the greatest to ever do it right there. Done at 29. I mean,
John Riggins lasted a long time. There's a couple others. Walter Payton was amazing late.
Yeah.
There's a couple others. But then I was even looking at, is there any receiver that I can think of that's like kind of like Deebo? The only one I could think of that kind of reminded me of Deebo was David Boston, who played at Ohio State.
Yeah.
He had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, but he only had a 6-year career in the NFL.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things. Deebo is 28, and he has been used a lot, and he's been used as a runner, and he has, a little bit of a propensity to put on a few extra pounds. And he's just he's never been a burner per se.
No.
And it's just like, you know what? This is what happens to power players. They get to 27, 28, 29, and they're done. And if you wind up paying them significant dollars beyond that point, shame on you. You blew that.
And the Niners were trying to trade Deebo this past offseason, understanding that the end of the line was nearing, and they couldn't get what they wanted. And yet when Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams needed a new contract, they had run out of people to restructure in order to free up some space to keep that cap money free for Brock Purdy that they could roll it over. So who did they extend? Deebo Samuel. And now they're going to have to eat $10 million each of the next 2 years. I mean, that's not an insignificant number. It's actually to the point where you're only paying them like 16, 17 million. So is the difference of 6 or 7 million worth the, having to find someone to fill the roster spot? Probably not. You probably keep Deebo around for another year just because of this deal that you just made with them. So that was bad business. That was short-sighted. And ultimately, the Niners have found themselves in this situation with a couple of players, right? McCaffrey would be a good example, even though he's a more graceful runner, but he's a running back. And we've had that conversation ad nauseum about the long-term viability of running backs. But they gave him a brand new contract. I guess they didn't even check the Achilles before they did it. And then George Kittle keeps getting re-upped and re-upped and re-upped. That guy plays like a human wrecking ball. And I know that some tight ends have lasted a long time, but you've seen the drop-off with Travis Kelce this year. I think that it is more exceptional than not to play into your deep 30s as a tight end, especially a physical tight end. Kittle has an ailment on every level of his body, and he has for the last 5 years. And it takes a lot to keep him out. But these hamstring injuries in week 3 and then this past week kept him out. That's telling. Trent Williams, 36 years old, didn't look right in the Super Bowl. What do they do? And listen, I'll be the first one to admit, I said give him whatever he wants. That's not looking so hot right now because he took a long time to round into form, if he ever did. And now he's got this bone bruise in his ankle. And that's not just something that goes away. You can't just shoot that up consistently, right? This is not a soft tissue thing where as long as I don't feel it, it's going to be okay. That is bone on bone. That's a bone bruise. That thing needs to fully rest and got to rest for more than a week to get that thing right. So just shooting it up, you're making it worse. You're exacerbating the problem. So this is the issue when you have one of the oldest teams in the NFL coming into the season. And ultimately, the mileage on each of these cars. Some cars last for 300,000 miles, right? Because they're well maintained and sometimes they're just special cars, right? And you don't know which one you're getting. But there are some cars that you can drive for 60,000 miles, but if you're driving them hard as hell, I think back to the cars I had in Chicago, and it's like, dude, you're going 100 degrees in the summer, 0 degrees in the winter. You are driving this thing hard, city miles, tough miles. If you get 80,000 on that thing before it chokes out, you won because you're riding it that hard. If you live in Southern California, you can drive your Lexus around in perpetuity because there's nothing to take it out. The elements aren't hurting it. The Niners have a lot of players who have been in now 70 games over the last 3-4 years, 70 games since 2021. And a lot of those games are tough, mean, slobber knocker, punch you in the mouth games in December, in January, and even in February. Those are some hard miles. And ultimately, it doesn't matter if the odometer might read a little bit lower than you thought it should. Those are hard fucking miles. And the time's up. The time's up on that engine. The car's getting totaled in real time. The problem is the Niners have a much longer lease than they initially expected, and that's their fault.